Tonight's presentation is obviously Women YL's an amateur radio, who we are, what we do, and where we're going. And it's presented by Melanie Glemser AG4YL, Catherine Andrews AC4YL, with the help of Young K4UPI. And just a very brief background on these ladies who are members of our club. Lori, K4UPI, her interest in ham radio was sparked at Field Day in 2013, our club Field Day, and 4 months later she got her license in general in less than a year. She was very active on HF and has already earned her DXCC certificate. She's a member of the Southeast DX Club. She's also active working satellites, I believe in AMSAT too. And as you saw previously, an active contributor to the club, serving as an officer and on the board of directors. Melanie, AG4YL, is, both of her parents were licensed amateurs. It's in her blood. She earned her tech in general in December of 2014, I guess on the same day, correct? And her extra 9 months later, in September of 2015. And I know she started out right into HF, running from a compromised location, I guess, with limitations, but with innovative antenna setups and an HF loaner radio from the club. She got on HF and started working stations and experienced a lot of success on the HF bands, working Australia and Iceland. So, and now she's, like a lot of people who use the club loaner radio, she's then purchased her own and moved up and continues on. Catherine Andrews AC4YL, I think about 3 or 4 years ago, the NARFL antenna install crew erected a wire antenna at her QTH and supplied her with a North Fulton loaner rig. So to keep you all aware that the club does have a team that'll go out and help you put up that first wire antenna and give you a lot of help. We got launchers, we got hands, we got ropes, and a lot of great technical expertise from some of the seasoned hams, and they're always happy to do that. So keep that in mind. And we have loaner equipment, nice solid state gear, not boxes of junk to loan for new or amateurs or new club members. Catherine's been a key driver. Oh, I failed to mention that she also has her extra cross license shortly after she got her first ticket, I believe. And she's been a key driver on YL efforts at North Fulton and I guess you could say worldwide. Along with Melanie, Catherine, and Lori, I believe that they serve or participate as net controls for the YL Thursday Night Nets. I believe they did a forum at Huntsville. And in 2016, the team of Catherine and Melanie finished first in the NARFL Challenge for National Parks on the Air. So, a lot of credentials in the club, as you will see throughout the year, the great resources and people we have here. So I will turn it over to Catherine.
Thanks, John. Well, thanks to that nice intro, I don't have to tell you all that if you're here for Jazzercise 101, you're in the wrong room. Okay, so thanks for that nice intro, John. So tonight we're going to talk about women in amateur radio, and as John mentioned, who we are, what we do, and where we're going. So first of all, how many of us have heard the abbreviation on the air, OM? Okay, so everybody knows what OM means, right? Okay, so OM dates back to Morse code and days of telegraphy, and it was an abbreviation for old man. And it was meant to be an endearing thing like, hey buddy, chum, that kind of endearing term. So that's what OM is. Now, a lot of you have heard that term. Now, with a show of hands, how many of you are familiar with the abbreviation YL and what it means? Okay, awesome. Saves me the trouble of explaining it, but I'm going to anyway. So what is a YL? Well, let's start with the origin of YL and where it came from. We know OM came from the days of telegraphy and Morse code. Well, YL dates back to 1920 with Marion Adair Garmhausen, 3 BCK. she wrote an article and submitted it to ARRL for submission into QST and inclusion in that. And it's a great article, so if you've never read it, if you are an ARRL member, when you have a moment, go online, log in, pull up the digital QST edition of July 1920, and read her article on how to build a wireless station. You'll get a kick out of it, because she talks about how she got her equipment and all the obstacles that she went through, and a brief little kind of a short synopsis of going to the store and picking out her kit, and how there was a group of teenage boys that kind of laughed at her, like, what are you doing in here buying equipment? You don't know anything about this stuff. And yet she had one who was very nice to her and encouraged her. And so she was able to overcome that obstacle. It didn't dampen her enthusiasm whatsoever. So she bought the equipment she needed and she went home. And next up, the next challenge was, okay, so how do I put up my aerial, what we call more commonly antenna? Well, in order to do it, I'm going to have to get up on the roof. So she goes to her mom, can I get on the roof? No. Goes to her dad, can I get on the roof? No. So, now that she had the permission of her parents, she borrowed the ladder from the neighbor next door. And she proceeded to put up her antenna. So, you'd say she didn't give up. She overcame that obstacle. Her enthusiasm was so strong, she was going to get her radio set up, she was going to get her antenna in the air, and she was going to listen, for sure. So I highly encourage you to pull out that article, July 1920 QST article. If you're an AR member, you can pull that up and read it. You'll get a kick out of it. So she sent in the article to be submitted and included. And by the way, this was the first article submitted and published in QST written by a female. So in response, when she submitted it to ARRL and asked for them to publish it, she got a letter in return. And this is where the term was coined, YL. And so she heard back from E.C. Adams from the QST team there at ARRL. And he states, my dear YL, we've had to coin a new phrase for your benefit. As you will readily see, OM will not fit. She's not an OM, right? And OL would certainly be most inapplicable. Smart man. So, hence the term YL. And Adair Garmhausen was the first YL, or young lady. So, while OM refers to any male amateur radio operator, regardless of age, YL refers to any licensed female ham radio operator, regardless of age. So the next slides have to give credit where it's due, come from the Feminine Wireless Operator article out of the Electrical Experimenter from 1916. And first off, that article talks about Kathleen Parkin. Now, Kathleen Parkin got her license at the age of 15. Her call sign assigned was 6SO, and she developed a reputation for building her own equipment. And that's what she was known for. At 15 years old, she put together her quarter kilowatt set. And it took time, but she learned to build it, and that is her set that she is sitting at operating in the picture. Amazing talent and amazing knowledge for, think about it, a young woman at the time. Do you think that education came along readily for someone of her age and her gender? No, not in 1916. So she had to overcome a lot to learn what she needed. But as she said, you can gradually learn to make all your own instruments, as I have done with her quarter kilowatt set. Impressive young lady. Granella Packer, at 22, she was the first woman wireless operator to serve aboard a steamship. So while she wasn't technically an amateur radio operator, she was a wireless operator, and she served aboard the Clyde liner Mohawk, and she was in full charge of the wireless there. And she was an inspiration to many other women. In fact, further on in this article, it talks about some of the women that were influenced by her and were encouraged and really wanted to participate in learning Morse code and getting active and going for a career in telegraphy at the time. And unfortunately, at the end of World War I, that kind of dissipated because women were not really included again in that realm, so to speak. So she was a great influence on several other women who had an interest in learning it and wanting to wear the uniform and get on the boat. And operate. So the next slides, we're going to talk about Clara Rieger, W2RUF, and this information comes from an article by W8SU, who did a tribute to her in 2006. So how many of you are familiar with Clara Rieger? Ever heard of her? Okay, cool. Good, new information. All right, awesome. So Clara Rieger was W8KYR, and that's her and her brother's shared QSL card that you see there. He was W8AOM. How nice. Now, she received her call sign in 1933, and she was 35 years old at the time. So we had some that got involved at 15, and now we have Clara, who gets involved at 35 years of age. Now, she was known to be a lifelong helper of those who were interested in radio and electronics, way up into her later years. Now, she was so proficient at Morse code, she could receive in excess of 50 words per minute. Anybody in here can do that? By ear, you know, without the computer? Maybe W4QO?
Yeah.
42.
But she spent a lot of her lifetime teaching others. Anyone that was interested in radio, she encouraged them and helped them to do just that. Now, one of the big things that we want to talk about as it relates to YLs is she's the one that came up with the signature salutation 33. How many in here are familiar with 33? Okay. Now, 33 was really when she was in a QSO with another YL. We know what 73 is. Best regards, right? It seemed a little informal from a YL to another YL, or too formal, I should say, from one YL to another. There was more of a closeness there. And it was so unusual for two YLs to be communicating with each other in amateur radio, especially then. Well, 88, hugs and kisses was a little too close. It just didn't really seem to fit either. So she came up with 33, a nice balance in between. And so 33 is the signature salutation from one YL to another YL, meaning love sealed with friendship. And so that is something very special and unique between one YL to another, and still used in amateur radio today. So for you YLs in the audience here, when you talk to another YL on the air, 33. So W8SU also did a tribute to Ethel Smith. We're going to talk about Ethel here. K4LMB. This is a picture of her in her shack on the bottom right, and a picture of her as a general manager of the QCWA, and a copy of one of her QSL cards that she had. Now, she was licensed in 1936, so she was 3 years past Clara Rieger, and she was the first YL ham active in the Naval Reserve Electronics Service. So that's where she was a big influence then and utilized her telegraphy and Morse code skills. In '39, she founded the Young Ladies Radio League and served as its first president. She continued to be an active ham. She operated both fixed and mobile. She enjoyed CW on 40 and 80 meters. But here's the cool thing. 6 months after her 79th birthday, 6 months later, she celebrated 6 decades in amateur radio by getting her amateur extra license. So, that tells you it doesn't matter how old you are, how young you are. We have 15 years old, we have 35 years old, and now we have someone at 79 getting her extra class license. So it's a lot of fun. It doesn't matter what age you are. So what about YLs today? I have no idea who that is. That's just a random picture of someone. And that was actually at a national park activation that Melanie and I did together. You say what now? Oh, gave it away. I'll have to fix that next time. Thanks for the tip, dear. So how did I get my start in amateur radio? Well, unlike Melanie, I didn't have any family members in amateur radio and ham radio. The closest I had family-wise was, from what I understood, many years later, after I got my ham license, I found out my grandfather spent a lot of time on the road, and he owned a downspout and gutter company in downtown Atlanta for many, many years. And so he did a lot of deliveries, and so he was a CB'er. And his handle was rigor mortis. Go figure. Anyway, that's the closest I have. So I didn't have any familial influence into amateur radio. But I had actually rented a special off Netflix that I just kind of come across called Wish Me Luck. Anybody heard of that? It's a British series that was out, and it was about women special agents during World War II in occupied France. And they were trained and sent over, and the part that really got my attention was the wireless operator. A lot of them were used as wireless operators, among other duties that they had. But I thought it was so cool because you see a picture here of this suitcase down here. It's like a child's suitcase, and what they would do is put a radio inside, and this is a radio inside, and they would carry it around, strap it to their bicycle and whatnot. And it was really cool because in several scenes, obviously that was the way they communicated back to Britain as far as what they needed, supplies, how was it going, did they meet up with the local resistance in France, and what the status was. And they also were communicated back from what they called the outfit, what their duties were and what they were supposed to do next. And so they used to carry this around, and I just thought it was so cool because in one scene, the wireless operator takes out the suitcase up, and once she gets checked into like a boarding house, a room she stays in, she goes in, she unpacks it, opens it up, and takes the wire over to the window and throws it up over the roof. And then she goes to tapping out her CW. And I thought, darn, that's cool. She's in France, she's talking to somebody in the UK, and she's using Morse code. I thought, that's pretty darn neat. How do you do that? And that was it for me. So then I did a little research, and I went to ARRL's website and did a lookup for local clubs. And the club that was closest to me at the time was actually CARS, Cherokee Amateur Radio Society. A lot of you might be familiar with them. A great group of folks there. And so I found out where their meetings were and when they did testing. So then I also found out, okay, I got to take a test, so what am I going to study? So how am I going to study it? So I actually used eham.net and did a practice test over and over to earn my technician. And I did the same to earn my general. Extra is a whole nother story, but that's a whole nother ball of wax. So I used eham.net to take the first two. And I highly recommend hamstudy.org to anybody that's looking to get your license or upgrade your license. It's a wonderful tool. Thanks to Melanie for pointing that out for me. And so, sure enough, I took the test with CARS, and I attended one of their meetings. And like I said, they're a great group, and they're an Aries-focused group. And I wasn't really interested in the emergency side so much as I was just the cool learning how to interact and communicate with people around the world with an antenna. It's pretty neat. So I did another look for a club, and I stumbled across this one. And what a wonderful gift and journey it has been with North Fulton, let me tell you. So what does that mean? I encourage you to find a club that suits you, that hits your interests, and encourage others to do the same. It might not be the first one you find. So then I went to the Stone Mountain Ham Fest, the Found Ham Fest, and that's actually where I first ran into Lori and Daryl and John Clute, who was doing a presentation on satellite, and it was really, really neat, and I thought, darn, this is cool. A lot of it over my head, but boy, it was fun, and so I had a good time, and it just really kind of whet my appetite to learn more, so that was a lot of fun. So then, after the Stone Mountain Ham Fest, Jim, W4QO, was inviting folks over to his home during, I think it was the November sweeps. And so I took advantage of that and went over there and got to watch Scott, KB4KBS, talk to people around the world in a matter of seconds. And I thought, darn, this is too cool. And now I've bit the contest bug. Is it ever going to end? And so I thought, wow, that's exciting. The pileups are awesome. When can I do that, right? And so it just really, really got me even more excited. So I wanted to be sure that I could operate. So I went about reaching out to the club members to help pick out an antenna. What did I need to put an antenna up? Several of the club members were nice enough to help me put up that antenna. Gary, K4NA, and John, N4TOL, and Chuck, AE4CW, were kind enough to come over and help me put up an antenna in the backyard. And I got that, borrowed a club radio, and I got my general class license the day of the Georgia QSO party in 2014. So came in, took my test, passed my test, could use stroke AG, went and grabbed lunch, went home for the QSO party at 2 o'clock, and I was on the air. Awesome! Okay, so that was cool. And then, oh, the fun's not over yet, right? You got the Georgia QSO party in April, and then you got field day in June. So then, got to operate field day, and I was invited by the club to operate the first 2 hours of field day. And you know, the most exciting times to operate field day are the first 2 hours and the last 2 hours, because you're opening it up and you're shutting it down. So lots and lots of fun. And so I grabbed Lori and I said, Lori, you gonna come over and help me out here? And so Lori was kind enough to hang out with me, and we had a lot of fun, and she helped me log and catch all those call signs that were flying at us left and right? And we had a blast doing that. And then, of course, there was Ham Jam in the following November, so I attended that and had a blast hanging out with Lori there, too. We just had so much fun.
Never stop.
But what I noticed is I wasn't hearing, I was listening on the air on the way into work and on the way home from work, and I wasn't hearing a lot of women on the local repeater. So I was like, I see some at the club meeting, but I'm not really hearing any of them. So, time to do a little searching for women in amateur radio. So I did some Googling, and I stumbled across the YLRL, and I found they have an HF net on Thursday nights at 9 o'clock Eastern. I thought, cool, I can make that. So I started tuning into that for a few weeks, and I got to hear Ann, WV1ARU up in Massachusetts, and Margaret, AE7MB out in Washington. And they would share and relay each other because they're on opposite coasts, so it was kind of cool. Some could hear what others could not, so that was fun. But the problem with HF nets is sometimes you can't hear anybody. So I thought there's got to be another way to do this. So why don't I start a local YL net? What an idea, right? And so I wanted to encourage YLs, not just locally, but all YLs that had an interest in amateur radio, any of them that I could reach, so that they could get the excitement that I was having and get past whatever was keeping them from getting on the air. Was it mic fright? Because I experienced that. I spent a few weeks doing nothing but listening to the repeater before I ever picked up a mic, and even then it's like, ugh. Even today, still, I get a little nervous sometimes picking up the mic, but you get through it. And so I thought, well, we have a repeater with our club, and there's Tech Talk, so we do nets, and we have Echolink, because people use Echolink to get on Tech Talk. So I thought, club repeater, Echolink, maybe I can utilize it. Now I gotta ask the club. So Neil, everybody knows Neil, N4FM. I went up to Neil after a club meeting and I said, hey Neil, I'm thinking about starting a YL net. Can I use the club repeater to do that? Who do I need to ask? And he goes, you just volunteer, just do it. Pick a day, pick a time, it's yours. Do it. Just let us know when, and we'll take care of the rest. So thank you, Neil, for your encouragement from the get-go to get the net going, and thank you to the club for letting us use the repeater to kick off the net. Without it, we wouldn't be where we are today. So thank you very much for that. So I started running the net, and the first net had 14 check-ins, including 2 YLs from Australia on the first net. Cool! But I thought, I can't spend hours coming up with material by myself and then trying to take check-ins and trying to run that. I can't do all this by myself. I need somebody that shares a similar idea and a passion, and Lori was one that certainly did that. And so I approached Lori and asked her, could you help? And, help me make sure I'm staying in the right direction and that we're keeping the gals interested and engaged. And Lori was certainly a great help for that, and among other things. So Lori, would you like to come up and tell us your story?
Great job, Catherine. Hi, everybody. I'm Lori, K4UPI, and this is probably one of the best endeavors I've ever taken on in my life. Ham radio has expanded my life. I've been a registered nurse for over 30 years, And I was very much on the medical side of life. So when all of the engineering and the coax and the radios and learning a whole nother language and universe came into my life, I was one of the lucky ones because I had an at-home instructor. I had probably one of the best teachers I could have asked for, and he was learning right along with me, but I would say probably at an accelerated rate of about 100. So here I was over here asking about 1,000 questions a minute just to learn how do you get into this hobby. Catherine approached me for the YL Net, and I remember thinking we have something so in common. Catherine and I had the passion, we had the interest, but we wanted to help YLs get into ham radio. We wanted to fold them into it. We didn't want to separate them. This was a very important point, to have someone or a place where YLs could go and they could learn about radio. They could learn about their equipment and do it at a pace that they were comfortable at, because it was very much male dominated, but you could say that all day long. But look at now the children that are involved, the youth that we deal with. Last weekend, I was playing downstairs in doing some artwork, and all of a sudden on the repeater you hear a 14-year-old voice. And they come on the radio and they want to talk to someone. Well, I felt like I was 14 when I started in ham radio. I put on a pair of the headset at field day, and I had, I think it was Mark Schumann right next to me, and he said, just start talking. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding. What do you mean just start talking? You know, there's 1,000 people out on the airways, everybody's listening. So the mic right was there, but on that day, I left that behind. Because the friendships that you make in ham radio, they trump anything that you could possibly fear. So when we started the YL Net, and we, all of a sudden, we started seeing such an interest in YLs wanted to be in the hobby. They wanted a common ground, common place to come and learn more about it, and that's what we did. We started the YL Net, and then all of a sudden they started coming from the UK, they started coming from Turkey, they started coming from all over the world, and they wanted to talk to us too. And they didn't want to be separated from anyone else in the hobby. They just wanted to learn. They wanted to sound educated and not, you know, but be comfortable, just whatever your level was at. So that's how we got into it. From there, once I was very fortunate because I got into it the first year when 10 meters was hot. 10 meters was booming. And 75 to 80% of my DXCC was as a technician. So sitting at the radio and just learning one step at a time. Don't ever say, you know, I speak to all the YLs in the room, come and join us. If you want to ask any questions at any level, at any rate, come and join us on the net. And this club is full of welcoming people. They want to share their knowledge. It's just limitless to how much you're going to learn at whatever pace you choose. So this is the club to do it at. Catherine, I can't thank you enough really for where you've taken the net, because you've reached so many women all over the world. So I'm not going to bore you with a whole bunch of stuff, but from 10 meters, the DXCC, I've gone on to be K4RGK's pupil, basically. And we've gone on to do satellite work together that is so exciting. He's, you know, with Martha, with Jim, the people that you meet and share this common ground with, it's just an unlimited education. So I'm your best advertisement because it's just a wonderful world to be exposed to. So thank you all for anything you've ever taught me, and let's keep having fun. So thanks.
Thank you, Lori, and not to forget all our fun times with W1AW Store and that Centennial event. What a blast. We just couldn't get enough of the pile-ups, and then we had a lot of fun. We got to spend some time together, and we got to spend some time apart, just practicing and learning to do it, which is great. A lot of fun. Let's not forget some of these other photos of Lori there. What were you doing in that picture?
Set operation.
Set operation, that's right. And then we've got Lori and Daryl out front there in their driveway there.
The HOA.
Okay, so we got the net going and some great success and continuing to grow. And then I was approached virtually by the District 4 chairwoman for YLRL, and she was not in a position to really go to the various hamfests and do the different things to represent the Young Ladies Radio League. So she emailed and asked me if I would take on that role, and I thought, well, okay, you're gonna have to tell me, what I gotta do, and I'm not sure about this. And, it's easy. You just go to any of the major hamfests you can make it to and set up a table and represent Young Ladies Radio League. And I thought, well, that's kind of cool. I don't know if I want to do that by myself. And it was a little nerve-wracking because I'm new and trying to figure all this out as I'm wading my way through. And so I was like, I'm going to need some help again. So I went to the Atlanta Ham Fest in 2015, and it was kind of cool there because I was able to meet some of the YLs that had been on the net, such as Allison, K4VLR, and of course got to see Lori again, and got to meet Melanie, who was then KM4GQN, who had just started attending the net a few months prior too. So got to meet her, and there's a picture of Martha and Donna, KM4FMW, and myself and Melanie at the time, and Allison. So we had a lot of fun. We got to hang out for a while. In fact, Allison and Melanie and I went and grabbed some lunch after the Hamfest and continued our cool and exciting adventures and excitement about getting YLs to get interested in active and amateur radio. So I had a lot of fun chatting with Melanie after the Hamfest, and again, she too had that same passion to help encourage women to get into amateur radio, get excited, and get active. And so I then, of course, as we got to know each other and hung out at Field Day, and she had some fun there, which she'll tell us a little bit about in a minute, I asked her if she maybe want to go to Huntsville with me and help me out, run a table for a while, RL, and you want me to what? So without further ado, Melanie, come on up and tell us your story.
You can do the clicker. Hi. I dressed up for the occasion. I just got off work, hence why I was a little late. So I apologize for that. Like John said in the introduction, my father was a ham BRS, and before I was born, Dad said, "Oh, you'll have such a good time." To my mom, "You need to get licensed. You have such a good time on the radio." And so she studied and learned the code, and she got her license, WA8CKA, and then in her words, Dad wouldn't let her near the Collins, so she went off and did her own thing, and that was kind of the end of that. That's my father. That was in the late 50s. My father with his, in his shack. It remained virtually unchanged. There he is climbing the tower for the quad. And in later years, not long before he died in 1972, is him and my mother at a convention. But, so she was not active. And my father died, as I said, in 1972. I was quite young. And I remember hearing him on the radio. I remember hearing the key downstairs and the code come in. But when he passed away, my mom sold off the ham gear to pay the bills, and I didn't have much of anything left from that legacy at all. I do have that lamp on the top left-hand side. I have that lamp there. It sits on my desk. That's about all I have left, but that's a good thing. So years went by. Every now and then I would express some interest about radio, and my mother said, well, you know, if you just study hard and learn the code. That to me was a big barrier. I don't memorize well. I have a real block with that, and I always have. So that was a real block. You know, I'd look at it and I couldn't get past it. And time went on, grew up, went off, did my own thing. Never really thought about ham radio. Sort of thought it had gone and died off and gone away. And about 20, I guess it was in 2014, 2015, television stations were transitioning over to digital. And I had a TV, I had a tuner, and I cut the cord, didn't want to pay for cable anymore. But I couldn't really afford a fancy digital antenna. So I started looking online. Like, well, when I was a kid, I used to play with the shortwave radios and throw the wires out the window and see what would happen and what I could get. I want to see what I can do. So I went online and I found sites to build your own antenna. Oh yeah, well there we go. There's one I built. Sites to build your own TV antennas. Well, you know, when you look up antennas, you also find lots of ham radio sites too. I thought, wow, ham radio's not dead? So I started looking into it, and well, it's a no-code test now. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe. I don't know. Well, about that time, it was, you know, the time for the Atlanta Ham Fest in 2014. Well, I chickened out and didn't go. I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know. I didn't see any representation of female ham radio operators online. I really didn't see that much out there. And I kind of chickened out. I'm like, what? I don't even know what a ham fest is. Again, I didn't have anybody or anything to set any kind of example or tell me otherwise. So if there's a lesson here, talk about the hobby. Talk about what it is. Tell people what to expect from it. My father was a ham, for gosh sakes, and I couldn't go to a ham fest. So I started searching the internet long about late summer, early fall. After that ham fest, I'm like, this is just ridiculous. I gotta find out more about this. So I looked on the internet and I thought, I'm gonna see if there's any women in ham radio anywhere, anything. I was looking for anything. You know, I have my father's example. It's just a bunch of old men. Rag chewing. And true, but a little bit. So I started searching the internet, and I was looking up female ham radio operators. That led me to the term YL. So I said, oh, YL, okay. So then I searched YL, and I came up to YLRO, like Catherine did. And I dug around their site a little bit, and I'm like, it's really not telling me a whole heck of a lot. And I'm going through the pages, and I'm like, yeah. And I get to the page on the nets. And there it is. YL net. Well, what's a net? I looked that up. Okay. I don't have a radio. On Echolink. Oh, well, what's Echolink? I looked that up. Okay. Well, that's kind of cool. Echolink, it's free. All you need is a computer. I got one of those. A headset, I can get one of those. And, oh, I got to get a license. So I thought, well, I'm going to find out what this YL net is all about. I'm going to have to get a license. So I made the decision to get a ham radio license so that I could get on the YL Echolink net so I could figure out if I wanted to be a ham. Yeah. It was worth it. It was a good investment. And that was the question. Is there a place for me in amateur radio? That was my question. So I studied, I passed my technician and my general in 2014, December 20th. I got my license, and that was on a Monday. It came through on the FCC, and that Thursday, I already had Echolink downloaded. I was lined up, I was ready to go, and I listened. Didn't get on it, but I listened to that YL net. And I was like, wow, this is cool. There's actually women on ham radio, and they're talking about amateur radio. How about that? That's cool. So I checked out other nets on Echolink. I'm like, gosh, I got Echolink, let's go play around. And I went to these different nets, and I participated in a few. I was even net control of some other nets. And they were all social nets, and those social nets are great. And they're fun. You meet lots of people. I had lots of friends on these nets. But I never found anything like this net. It's truly, truly unique. Especially a net for women. Tech Talk is a very, very, very good net. Also done by this club on Monday evenings. It's a great net. The YL net is similar. It shares some similar characteristics in that it's about amateur radio. It's not a social net. I mean, we're social. We do know a little about each other's lives and our personalities and who we are and where we come from. But what makes this net truly unique is that it is the only net that I have ever come across that is for YLs talking about amateur radio. And like Laura said, it's all levels. It doesn't matter whether you're, we've had children that were, what, 8, 9, 10 years old? 8 years old? And women that are probably 88. And talking about everything and anything amateur radio. It's a nice place for women to feel like they can ask anything, say anything. Women communicate a little bit differently than men. And it's a place where they can communicate and get together. But again, like Lori says, it's not intended to be exclusive. Like, oh, this is just women's ham radio. It's not what the net's about. It's about getting women up to that speed and giving them that advantage that men tend to have and women don't. So that they can merge right on into that highway of ham radio, both male and female. We're hams. We don't necessarily have a gender, so to speak. We're hams. We're all ham radio operators. And the WildNet just helps women feel comfortable enough to go into a hobby that is predominantly male. There's a woman in Nova Scotia, her name's Helen Archibald. VA1? VA1YL. And she's the expeditioner. Her and her daughter and her OM, and her son was into the expedition. She wanted to go out, and that looks like fun. She said, but I have one rule. I'm not taking care of the food. And you know it's sometimes, not that there's anything wrong with that, but sometimes it seems to be, well, you know, we'll let the women do the food and the men will play radio. Well, the women can play radio too. We can do it all. After I got on the net for a while, I participated a little bit more, had a lot of fun, and then I went to the Atlanta Ham Fest, and as Catherine said, had an eyeball QSO with her and some of the other gals. We met on the net. And yes, I just did air quotes. I always said I would never do that. And let me jump back a little bit. After I got my ticket, the local group was K4UPI Amateur Radio Club. I could walk to their meetings. Well, at least where they used to be. They don't have a home right now. But anyway, I could walk to their meetings. And I thought, okay, well, let's get involved. Let's find out. Here's a club. Let's get into the club. And similar to Catherine's story with cars, they're more of an Aries-focused club. And while yeah, they were nice enough to me, nobody treated me badly, I didn't feel that I fit. It wasn't really a good fit. So fast forward, we're at the Atlanta Ham Fest. I'm there because Carco sponsors that. And so I'm actually working it. I volunteered to help out in the morning. And then I got to play around at the Ham Fest and have my eyeball QSOs. After the Ham Fest, Catherine and I start talking, and we're like, wow, you know, you're going to start doing stuff with the YLRL, and okay, you know, that's great. Neither one of us had any idea what we were doing. Then comes up field day. I haven't been on HF. I haven't actually been on anything but an HT. And field day comes along, and that's my GOTA pin. So went to GOTA, and Catherine actually mentored me on GOTA and worked a huge pileup. I think I made about 65 Qs in an hour. Yeah, it was fun. Yeah, it was real fun.
First time on HF.
It was real fun.
She's running around with her pin.
I had so much fun. And then the next day, Catherine was talking about opening the field day first 2 hours and closing field day last 2 hours. That's the last 2 hours. She said, "Do you want to log for me?" The club was using N3FJP at the time, and I was like, "I don't know anything about log." She goes, "Oh, that's easy." Showed me how to log and had a blast. So I'm like, okay, when's the next contest? We got to play radio. This is going to be a big thing. So that in the backup one frame, there's the backup one. There you go. That's the antenna we ended up building so we could go work portable. North American QSO part? No. International DX. Which one is it during Huntsville?
No, I think it's NAQB.
NAQP? Okay. North American QSO party is at the same time the Huntsville Ham Fest is, which she asked me to go and help her out with. So I'm like, well, too bad we can't, you know, play the contest and go and do this thing for the Ham Fest. She goes, well, why not? And I went, ooh, I like the sound of this. So that was the beginning of portable operations and hotel room. We had adjoining rooms, so we put the antenna on one side and the operating station on the other. It didn't work well. But it was a lot of fun. But then later on, we were coming back from Huntsville. We sat on the side of a mountain and talked to a gentleman in New York? Arizona, New York, yeah. But there's us at the YLRL table in Huntsville, and then that all leads to NPOTA, National Parks on the Air. And I think that was the first activation we did at Kennesaw Mountain in 2016, in March of 2016. So it all kind of jibed and blended together. But the common thread, and what associates all this boring biography, is that every time we would do a ham fest, we get all these women that would come up and say, I'd like to be more involved in ham radio, I don't know how to. I'm interested in getting my license. I want to get my, gentleman would come up, I want to get my wife, my daughter, my mother, whoever involved in amateur radio. How do I do that? They all wanted to do something having to do with amateur radio. And so we started to do forums. And Some of the gals that were in a few of our forums, we started to do forums and interact with these people. So, what's the next one we have up there? Yeah. There we go. So there it is. We're wrapping this, because I know y'all want to go home. And it's led to us to put a little thing together called YL Ops. And what started out as the Echolink YL Net has become the YL Op Net. And in the preamble of the net, Catherine wrote, this is just an excerpt out of it, encouraging YLs everywhere to become and stay active in amateur radio, improve our operating knowledge, and have fun. And that's what the YL Op Net is all about. That's what we try to do now with our forums and Hamfest. And I hope this didn't bore too many of you, and some of you got something out of it. Encourage others. And then that's on the N4GA Sweat Mountain repeater every Thursday evening, 7 p.m. I'm sorry, 8 p.m., 8 to 9:30. What am I thinking, 7? My brain's in somewhere else. Central Time. My brain was in Central Time, yeah, thank you. I was in Alabama still. I was over in Huntsville. I was still in Huntsville. OMs are welcome to listen. And YLs, please check in. Let everyone you know. Catherine, anything else?
Well, Lori had come up and asked me to thank you, Melanie, from both of us for all your support in helping grow the net even further, because without you it wouldn't be what it is today either. So it's the support of you and Lori and this club and all the YLs that participate in the net. We're talking about making friends with amateur radio, and it's funny because Francisco, who I came across on Facebook when I was posting reminders for the net and all the YL Facebook groups I could find that I'm a member of, he's in Azores and sent me a message asking more information about the net, and is promoting it to the women there in Portugal and any of the women that he knows that are ham radio operators. And I just got a package in the mail from him yesterday with a nice CD of music from his country there, and QSL card, and I brought some other QSL cards that I have, so if any of you want to see some of them, I have just a few that I brought with me if you would like to look at them. Thank you so much, everybody, for your time. We appreciate it. Thanks to North Fulton for your support in encouraging us with this net, and for welcoming YLs at Field Day and in every activity that you do. It means so much to have such a club that is so warm and welcoming, regardless of age, gender, anything else. It's wonderful to be a part of this club, and thank you very much.